My next guest is Liberal MP Tim Wilson, live from our Melbourne studio. Thanks for your time. Do you agree? Would this be the sort of thing ICAC could look at? That is Wang Zhangmo's dealings with both major parties?
Well, the job of any body that deals with corruption be to focus on corruption. Now, if somebody's suggesting that's actually the case and that's what's happened, then of course it should be investigating that. But we actually need to make sure we get to the bottom of what the allegation actually is, not merely imply it. We know, for instance, that Bill Shorten had a lunch with this individual. Of course, in a free society, he's entitled to do so, but it should receive the same rigour and scrutiny as any other conduct around the political process that meets that benchmark.
The question about this one, though, as well, is you've got what was basically cash for words in the case of Sam Dastyari.
Yes, which is actually very serious.
Sure, yes, and it certainly is, and it's something we've focused on a lot. Cash for access via a former Liberal minister as well, Santos Santoro. The question about using this type of body is we might not find out answers otherwise. So isn't there enough there to want to know more detail?
Oh, I think everybody wants to know details, and that's why I agree with the proposition they actually did put forward, which is transparency is critical to making sure that the political process is operating appropriately. But I don't quite agree with jumping to the point of making allegations along cash for access. People are entitled to meet with anybody in a free society as they see fit. The appropriate thing is that there's not any particular favouritism given to any decision-making or any access point, simply because people happen to be supporters.
And the point that has been made from Peter Dutton is there was certainly no citizenship granted, sure, but again, are you saying there's not concern in of itself about this cash for access?
No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that it's important to have proper probity and make sure that no favours are given. And what's clear, actually, is that there are allegations that have basically been made around a minister and whether they met with somebody. And the point is that despite the allegations, the decision's actually gone the other way, where Mr Huang has had his visa revoked for entry into Australia, which shows that it's just a baseless allegation and we should be focusing on the facts.
So in terms of transparency, it's just up to the people involved to give us all the information available? Is that what you'd call for?
Well, we already have transparency obligations around publication of donations under the Australian Electoral Commission, and that's the appropriate thing to be done. Now, there's a lot of other allegations flying around, but that's the process that's in place. It's the one that works, and if there's a need to change that to raise standards or to shift standards, I should say, then I'm happy, like anybody else, to consider any other proposal.
And should coalition MPs be steering clear of Santos Santoro?
I don't believe that. I believe in a free society, Tom, and people are free to associate with anybody as they see fit. And of course, when people choose to associate with some people, they'll wear the consequences of that, positive or negative. So it's up to people to make their own decisions as they see fit.
The other aspect about transparency is we have today Labor senators trying to get the Department of Home Affairs to be recalled. It's being blocked now because of numbers of Liberal MPs within that committee. I mean, that doesn't sound like transparency, does it?
Well, I'm not familiar with that, but I presume you're talking about Senate estimates, and I don't know the circumstances, so it's probably not right for me to comment.
But you'd think that if, they want to ask questions of Home Affairs, the Liberal MPs should have blocked that?
Well, you're making an allegation. I'm just saying I'm not familiar with Senate processes. I'm a member of the House of Representatives, and I don't know the circumstances or situation in which those committees work. Sorry, Tom.
OK. I notice on your Facebook post, Tim Wilson, you love the future, the hashtag you're
trying love the future.
Make more popular. I'm not sure to what extent it's taken off. The future is going to be awesome is how you like hashtagging things. The government seems a bit more conflicted, though, on the electric car. Do you need to get them a bit more excited about that future?
We're not conflicted at all. I mean, everybody, I think, in the government wants to see adoption of new technology and to be adopted by the public based on technology that progresses and technology that develops. What we don't want is to see a situation where the government forces new technology into the market that might be substandard or outdated, which might have bigger environmental footprints and may not be cost competitive. I mean, People adopt technology because it's competitive, it delivers what they want based on their needs. That's the objective of this government. What they don't want, what this government doesn't want, is the government to come along and force people to adopt things when they're not ready or the technology isn't there. I mean, I reckon electric cars are awesome. They're absolutely awesome. Right. I'm totally in favour of them, but I'm also not a fool.
The talk, though, about vehicle emission standards, though, and the line we keep hearing from the PM is 17 out of the 20 top sellers at the moment wouldn't be able to make it under the new vehicle emission standards that would kick in later. Now, surely the answer to that is, well, yeah, there'll be different cars. They'll be awesome, in your words. They'll be more fuel efficient. Car makers will switch to making those cars around the world because it's not just us introducing vehicle emissions.
Yeah, but you also know, Tom, that we no longer produce cars in Australia, and we are not going to be the ones that dictate the terms and conditions of what global standards are going to be. Our job is to move and reflect, and obviously to incentivise a cleaner environmental footprint with vehicles. But what we can't do is dictate to them. If we impose some standards today when there's only, say, 70 of the top 21, that means we constrain the number of vehicles that could be sold in Australia to 5. I don't think that's a sensible option. That would actually take out of the market huge numbers of choices and options for consumers. We have to track this technology change.
Tomorrow, this is in future years, and as Labor has pointed out, well, they're putting it on a par with US emission standards. Granted, they've got a bit of a freeze on theirs lately, but well below, for example, or much less harsh than the EU standards. So there'd be cars out there, wouldn't there? There'll be a market.
Well, I'm not an expert in vehicle emission standards, but yes, you want to continue to move and reflect with the market, and I think that's what we're going to continue to do. Now, we have different cars traditionally being consumed in Australia than other markets because of our geographic size and everything else. And so we will continue to move with technology, but setting amber claims far out into the future without any sense of how you're going to get there. And this is the consistent underwriting principle in Labor policy, is that they make bold claims that they can't back up, whether it's how much they want to cut greenhouse gas emissions, how much renewable energy they want, no pathway to get there, just the idea that they want to look cool.
What about the bold claim from Michaelia Cash, will save the ute? Toyota Hilux says it's already saved. The company confirming there'll be an electric version in 6 years, so job done.
There you go. I'm very pro electric cars, as I've said, and I think the future is going to be awesome. And I think the space for these, the market's going to solve these problems. And I think Bill Shorten is just doing a lot of things to make himself look hip, look futuristic and look cool, but he's actually got nothing to do with them.
All right. Can I ask you finally as well, there's a lot of talk about Labor costings, negative gearing, capital gains tax, even change behaviour on franked dividends as well. Which side are you going to pick here? That Labor won't save all that money and therefore it won't be a big hit on the economy, or it will be a big hit on the economy because they've got their costings right?
It can actually be both. You can actually see that Labor, if it's, for instance, dividend imputation, franking credits policy, the retiree tax comes in, they're not going to raise the revenue, but people will change their behaviour and send their money offshore. That's what we heard consistently through our recent parliamentary inquiry. We found out overnight that Labor's relying on old, dodgy, outdated data around negative gearing. The same is also true with the retiree tax about what's going to happen. The reality is Chris Bowen has been consistently lazy in the policy that he's developed and then the solutions that are going to come from it. And that's why Australians should be rightly sceptical of many of the economic messages the Labor Party is sending out. It's not because they're being clever and they've done the hard yards. It's because they've been lazy and they don't understand the consequences of what they're doing.
Some might call it brave as well.
No, I'd say it's lazy.
Out of time. All right, I just said some might say, but Tim Wilson, we'll leave it on that note. Thank you.